So one thing I have learned over extensive years of road trips is that road trips can go wrong in all kinds of ways. Right? There's so many ways that a road trip can go wrong, like in unexpected ways, and then also in ways that we would maybe describe as we probably should have seen that coming kinds of ways. Right? But the worst way to start a road trip is simply this: loaded up, ready to go, and then we look around the car and we say, well, where do we want to go? Right? We may be packed up. We have all the people we want to travel with us. We maybe have the snacks ready. Maybe we printed road trip T-shirts. We're ready to roll. And then it's, well, but where? Where should we go? What do we want to do? Where is it that we're heading off to? Because the thing is, without the two where things settled, it's going to be a disaster. There is no more wrong way to start a road trip than not knowing where it is we're going. So it's important to get where we want to go. But we'll never get to where we want to go without dealing with two big questions. And the first one is pretty obvious. Where is it we actually want to go? And just like if we were asking that question in a car as we were getting ready to leave the driveway, where is it that we're heading? When we try to sort that question out in life, we have all sorts of opinions around us. All sorts of voices around us, people telling us, hey, here's what we think it should be like. This is what we think you should be doing with your life. This is what the destination and the goal of your life, what it should look like. And our lives are full of voices and opinions and thoughts about where it is that we should be trying to get to. Meanwhile, we're working our way through that question, wrestling hard with it for ourselves. Not just trying to listen to other people's opinions, not just trying to listen to other people's voices, the other things that people think that we should do, other people's values driving that decision. So we wrestle it down. And then the next question, so how do we get there? Right, where is it we're trying to go? And how do we get there? The beautiful thing this morning as we pick up in Summer Mixtape Volume 3, Road Trip Edition, in week 3 of this series, is that there are 2 songs that we're adding to our mixtape that are going to help us sort out exactly those questions. They're going to actually help us wrestle our way through those 2 big questions. So Psalm 127 and Psalm 128. These 2 psalms they're both wisdom psalms. They're actually written with the scholars as they look at these 2 psalms. They're written as a pair of psalms. These 2 psalms side by side that work together to help us understand something that's very, very important about our journey and relationship with God. Psalm 127 is a unique kind of wisdom psalm. Most of the time when we see in Scripture, a passage of Scripture, and in particular a psalm that's considered a wisdom psalm, it functions and is structured in a particular way, but this psalm is different. This wisdom psalm, Psalm 127, does not describe a particular behavior and then results that will come from acting in that way. Right? Most of the time when we read a wisdom psalm, it gives us instruction for life, and then it offers us the benefit of living in that way. Psalm 127 isn't structured that way. Instead, it's specifically structured and written to cultivate a perspective about God's involvement in our lives, to help us understand the way that God is involved. So it's not just, this is what you should do, and if you do this, this is what God will do. It is wise to have this perspective. It is wise for us to understand how God is involved in our lives, and then to recognize that God's involvement in our lives is an invitation for our lives to live our lives in relationship with God. So Psalm 127 is not describing behavior and then the results or outcome of that behavior. Psalm 127 is unique in the sense that it's not a formula for success. It doesn't say, here's the things you should do. Here's specifically, point by point by point, this is how you get to, or this is the way that you can live your life to be successful. Instead, it offers us a perspective that leads to a different approach to life. It offers us a perspective that leads to an approach to life that leads to us living a blessed life. And so we look at this first Psalm, Psalm 127, and we say, well, if it doesn't give us a if you do, then you will receive kind of structure, if it doesn't give us a point-by-point list of behaviors that we should do, if it doesn't tell us exactly how we're supposed to live point by point by point, then what does it do as a wisdom psalm? Here's what it does. written to a particular group of people in a particular time, wrestling with a particular cultural and social reality, the way that things were in this point in history. It addresses the biggest concerns that thousands of years ago, people who were seeking to live their life in a way that honored God. It addresses their biggest concerns about their life and about their legacy. Actually, very, very specifically. Some of the things that are like the very specific wrestlings, the very specific concerns. So it's not just, this is in general, this vague or broad sense of the kinds of things that God wants to do or the kinds of ways that God is involved. They're very, very specific and related to the cultural moment, the historical moment that the first people to have sung these songs would have been living in. Living in a time in history where life was very, very fragile. Written in a time in history where there wasn't like investment accounts and there wasn't opportunities to store up in really long-term kinds of ways where success and failure in life and in providing for oneself wasn't just, boy, this is going to be a tough year. It could lead to the end of life for them. A fragile existence. Legacy that was wrapped up in different things than what we might think of legacy at this moment in time, which is really beautiful. It's really beautiful that it's written so specifically for a people in a particular time to say, this is the specific promise dealing with specific concerns that you have in this moment. It's like we could list the concerns that we carry with us, very specific to 2026, the very things that we're worried about, the things we're concerned about, the things we're posting about on social media or reading about on social media. And it's a song that addresses specifically those concerns. And it's beautiful that it addresses the concerns so specifically, but it makes a little extra work for us because we have to not only hear the words that were sung, these words sung to encourage each other, to worship God, to glorify God, but then also to extract from those words principles. And then with those principles, then apply those in specific ways to our lives to get to the specific application for us. How about this principle? There is no substitute for God's protection and provision in our lives. There's no substitute for God's protection and provision in our lives. Here's how Psalm 127 says it. Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain. There's no substitute for God's protection and provision in our lives. These two verses have this statement, or this first verse has these two words that help us understand it. One is the word unless. Unless the Lord builds the house. Unless the Lord watches over the city. The picture that's painted, if you extract the part that the Lord plays in this, if you extract the part that God plays in this, it's a very bleak picture. If you are trying to protect your family in a time when existence is fragile, when it's hard to keep all the pieces in place to make sure your family is protected and provided for, if you extract this is what the Lord does. If you take the unless part out of it, it sounds like this: the builders labor in vain, and the guards stand watch in vain. To protect and provide for our families, right? To make sure that we're safe and cared for. It's a hard picture without the unless. And then there's the vain part. And that's not like you're so vain. It's just not going to work. Right? It won't actually function if you try to do it this way, if you try to approach it without God at work in it, without entrusting God to it. You can do the very best. You can watch with all vigilance. You can build with all kinds of like structural understanding, and without God at work in it, it's done in vain. But here's the beautiful thing, is that unless gives way to when the Lord. So when the Lord builds, what is built lasts. When the Lord watches over the city, what is watched over is protected and endures, right? The unless isn't like God might do that, or if you're lucky, or if God is in a good mood as he looks on you, or if God has a particular interest in your life. It's like But when God is involved, that's the point of this. When God is involved, when we recognize that God is involved in this, what happens and the way that we provide and protect and the work that we do is shaped by our understanding of God at work in all of it. This in vain principle even extends to our work, right? Even extends to our attempts, the work that we do to provide for ourselves, to provide for the people who we're responsible for. Psalm 127, verse 2, in vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves. Some of us know very, very well what it feels like to work, like what feels like endless hours trying to make ends meet. To work endless hours to provide for ourselves, to provide for our families, to work our fingers to the bone, trying to provide for the people we're responsible for, to care for the lives that have been entrusted to us. And it's like, man, I'm working and working and working. I'm rising up early and I'm staying up late. I'm trying to make sure that everybody who I'm responsible for has everything that they need. And for he grants sleep to those he loves. We need to tease that one out. Otherwise, we find ourselves sleepless in the middle of the night saying, and even God doesn't love me. Right? I can't fall asleep. That must mean God doesn't care about me. The picture is different than that. Picture a farmer's sleep. And what I mean by that is while a farmer is resting, things are happening. While a farmer is sleeping, the field is growing. So it's not just that the farmer is doing direct work to grow crops, to prepare a crop for harvest, but even in the time when the farmer is resting, the crops are continuing to work their way towards harvest. So there's things that are happening. There are things that are happening while rest is happening. So this is that cooperation. This is a picture of work and rest. And when God is involved, things are happening that we're not even involved with. Like a farmer is growing a field of crops, and yet even when the farmer is sleeping, the field is growing. God is involved. God grants sleep to those he loves. This rest, this farmer's rest, things growing while they're resting. A few years ago, I came across, in a book that someone had shared with me, I came across this little passage that has radically shifted my understanding of sleep and rest. And in this book, this paragraph started with a sentence that didn't just catch my attention, it caught my breath. It said, falling asleep is spiritual. And I'm like, I have to think about that. First of all, in those times in life when it's hard to fall asleep, falling asleep sometimes is hard enough. Now it's a spiritual battle, right? That's come on, right? I already have reasons not to be asleep. Now it's oh man, I'm not doing it right spiritually. Why can't I calm my mind? So okay, I need to figure this out. So I'm continue reading in this passage, and it's so beautiful because what's unpacked as the author unpacks this, he says, so what I mean by that is when we sleep, we're not taking responsibility for everything else that's happening in the world during whatever hours we're asleep. We're closing our eyes and we're saying, God, I trust you to handle all of the affairs of the world. The stuff that I need, the stuff that could do me harm, the stuff that, I can't even make myself breathe while I'm sleeping. Actually, if you want to drive yourself crazy, think about your breathing while you're trying to fall asleep. You're never going to fall asleep then. Oh man, I just made breathing a conscious thing. Now I'll never ever fall asleep again. This is never going to work. Try to keep your heart beating while you're trying to fall asleep. You can't do it. But when we say, God, I trust you to sustain my life during these times, these hours, now that I'm falling asleep, it becomes a spiritual act. It becomes an act of saying, God, I trust you. I trust you. I trust you. God, there's all kinds of things over the next however many hours that I sleep that are going to be happening in this world while I'm resting, and there's nothing I can do about them. I'll find out about them when I wake up. Falling asleep is spiritual. He grants sleep to those he loves because he's involved in our lives. And then one particular concern as Psalm 127 comes to a close, one particular concern, remember fragile existence, remember legacy and the things that are wrapped up, what little can be left behind in this moment thousands of years ago in history. And then a question, what if we even trusted God with our legacy and our reputation? Verse 3, children are a heritage from the Lord, offspring, a reward from him. Like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth. Written in a time when heritage was wrapped up in offspring, where really all that was left behind was the family that we raised up. And so for the mind, these thousands of years ago, as they worshiped, it is, of course, children are a blessing, but that's not the only blessing. And it's not like the reverse of it isn't true. Like for someone not to have children doesn't mean that God doesn't love them, care about them, and is not blessing them in other kinds of ways. But in this moment in history when people would have just their heritage and their legacy was wrapped up in the number of children that they gave birth to, for their minds to comprehend any other blessing, that's the thing that they are so focused on. And so the psalmist says he's giving words to the cries of the heart. He says, so like children are a heritage from the Lord. From the Lord. And so if someone is walking around peacocking and proud because of the number of children that they've had, recognize that it is from the Lord. It's from the Lord. It's a work that he has done. It's not something that we take pride in the sense of, look what I have accomplished. It's from the Lord. And that they're arrows in the hands of a warrior, our children born in one's youth. To protect and provide for you as you age, and what a blessing for that to come early in life, right? To have a retirement plan kick in way before it's time to slow down, to have protection and provision, not just work you're doing, but the work that your kids are doing, all these kinds of things in an environment, in a season in history when family was not only just family, but it was community and family business, all these kinds of things. It's the closest thing that thousands of years ago someone could have had for a retirement plan. But then the perspective from the Lord, which means that as good and as helpful and as protection and provision, all of that feels like our kids are ultimately, it's God's protecting and providing through them. Blessed is the man whose quiver is full of them. They will not be put to shame when they contend with their opponents in court. Which is, there's some distance for us to make sense of this. It's hard to wrap our heads around the distance between us and the people who were singing this song for the first time, where they could actually, like, we read this strange word and like these words, and we can't imagine that being up on the screen as we're singing worship songs. It's like, thank you, God, for our children, because when we get dragged into court, we have children. And we're like, pretty snappy. I think I'd like to keep singing that song. It's like, what does that even mean? There is distance between us and the first time this song was sung. It's very practical. The best protection against judgment as a popularity contest. The best protection against a court that wasn't a just court, or where there was always the potential of a mob rising up and dragging somebody out of town and dealing with mob justice or mob vengeance. The best protection against all of those kinds of things is to have as many people on your side who will be on your side no matter what. And so to have a bunch of kids is great, because if you get dragged into court, if the mob turns, or if it's a popularity contest, guess what? You've got kids to stand with you. Then Psalm 128. Psalm 128 moves from wisdom to blessing. And actually, Psalm 128, we talk about Psalm 127 not having the formula, the wisdom formula that we're waiting for. Psalm 128 actually opens with the formula that we've been waiting to hear. Psalm 128, verse 1, blessed are all who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to him. The formula. How do we get to blessing? How is it that we get to the things that God is wanting to give us? Blessed are all who fear the Lord, who walk in obedience to him. If you've ever been the one responsible for driving, and someone says, You actually, don't worry about a map. You don't actually need the address to put into your phone. Like Siri can't help you in all of this. This is, I'll just tell you when to turn along the way. Has anyone driven like this with a navigator where they're like, hey, you don't need the map. Don't even worry about it. I'll tell you when to turn when we get there. And you're driving, and it's like, how about now? Is this the turn? Could you give me a little bit of a heads up on when the next turn is coming? Or you don't need I'll just be your navigator. You just drive, I'll tell you when to turn. And as the driver, would love to know what the next turn is. Would love to know what the next handful of turns are. Because there's really two kinds of travelers when it comes to this. People who love this kind of approach and those of us who don't. And so we hear this, and it's like to walk in obedience to him. It doesn't say, blessed are all who fear the Lord, and he will give us a map with turn-by-turn instructions and exactly what to expect at every step along the way. I'll give you the directions as we go. And so the formula that we've been waiting to hear might actually not be what we've been wanting to hear after all. And this one verse is built on two words that we would tend to make transactional. If there's ever a tendency to make something transactional with God, blessed and obedience. Right? Those two words become the foundational pieces of almost every transactional negotiation we want to make with God. So we do it this way, blessing as compensation. So God, I will. And then we think of what's the best thing I can do, the biggest gesture that I can give to God to get God to do the blessing for us that we want God to do. So we think of it as some sort of compensation. And we set the terms for it. God, I will for you. God, I will do, and we just we think and we fill in the blank with whatever the biggest thing or whatever we think is reasonable negotiation with God to get God to do the thing that we want to do. That's a transaction. It's a negotiation, it's a transaction. Or it's blessing as compensation or obedience as a response. We might not say these exact words, but we operate like this. If God is blessing me, then I will. And we fill in the blank, whatever we understand and we know that God is asking us to do. Where we make our obedience conditional on whether or not we feel like God is caring for us. Whether or not we feel like God has, in this moment, held up his end of the bargain as we have described it for him. We say, if I'm blessed, if God is blessing me. But the reality is we're the ones setting the terms in both of these things. So it's that idea of here we are making a transaction and us setting the terms. And here's the frustrating thing. No matter how hard we try to read transaction into this psalm, it resists transaction in every way. It utterly refuses to bend to our desires. We would want to read into this. So God, what do I have to do? How do I know I've done enough of the obedience to get the blessing? Or if I do the thing, then how do I know that God is doing? Or is God blessing me so that I feel like I should do? No matter how hard we try to read transaction into this, it resists at every turn. It refuses to bend to our desires. And not only that, it calls us to walk in obedience, which is interesting how that shows up in a traveling song, in a song that's a pilgrimage song, in a song that's written in part to accompany the people of God as they take a journey to Jerusalem to worship him, where they'll use these songs in worship as well, which gives us a new understanding of the pilgrim journey, that it's not just walking to God, that it's learning to walk in his ways along the way. Right? Not just that we're journeying to God, but along the way, God is teaching us, patiently teaching us, step by step, to walk with him, to live our lives in step with him. And so then a picture. You'll eat the fruit of your labor, blessings and prosperity will be yours. Many of us know the feeling that's the other side of this, that it's all the work and none of the reward. It's like I'm working really hard, but somebody else is reaping all of the benefits. And because we know that feeling, we know how beautiful the promise is. That God lets us enjoy the fruit of our work. Actually, maybe the only way to understand it well is when we've been on the wrong side of it. When we have worked and worked and worked and somebody else is reaping the benefits of our work. They have been. Those who first sung this song were a people who had been enslaved, who had worked for the benefit of other people. It's a people who had lived in exile while others were living in the houses that they built, while others were enjoying the fruits of their labor, the things that they had harvested, what they had grown and what they had gathered and what they had stored up for themselves. Other people had reaped the benefits of it. And so as they're singing the work that God has done, as they're singing the way that God has restored them, it's a promise of experiencing the blessing, the reward from the work. Your wife will be like a fruitful vine within your house. Your children will be like olive shoots around your table. In a time when diet was grains primarily, and then some meat along the way, to have these two crops that would have been the sweetening things of life, the fruitful vine and the olive trees. To recognize that the fruitful vine ensures harvest for years and years to come and sweetens life in every way. And the olive tree with the fresh shoots growing up around it, to recognize that at some point the old olive tree is going to stop bearing olives, and these new shoots ensure harvest for generations to come. So maybe it's not just about us producing fruit in our own lives, but how do we help raise up and help the next generation be fruitful? Yes, verse 4, this will be the blessing for the man who fears the Lord. And then Psalm 128 closes with some pastoral words. May the Lord bless you from Zion. May you see the prosperity of Jerusalem all the days of your life. And may you live to see your children's children. Peace be on Israel. This is a picture of these widening circles. This picture of this circle with God at the center as the source of blessing, and then the work and the blessing that he does for us. And then it's a blessing for our community, and it's a blessing for generations to come. God blessing us, and then us open-handed receiving blessing from God, and then blessing our community, and then blessing the generations that come after us. But if we get this wrong, and we don't have God at the center of it, the thing that is at the center of it is then ourselves, which is by definition self-centered, which means that we're living our lives for ourselves. So instead of this outward movement, it becomes this inward focus. Instead of it expanding outward, it's how do we gather for ourselves and how do we hold on to what it is that we think we need and what we think we deserve. But with God at the center, the directions work, the life works, the approach to life works. God blessing us. We are open-handed with the blessings that God has given us. We bless our community, and then we bless the generations yet to come. And so these Psalms are written for a particular people at a particular time and at a particular place to be a blessing and an encouragement to them based on the contextual realities of their lives. The things that they were investing their lives in. What would it look like for God to bless the things that keep you up at night? The work of your hands, the things that you're laboring, like your fingers like worn to the bone doing this thing. What would it look like for God to bless that thing? This is the promise of Psalm 127 and 128. Which means that when we look at our lives, and we apply this to our lives, is that what we invest our lives in can be blessed if we start in the right place and with God as the source. Right? With God's approach to life as the way that we approach our work, with God's approach to life with the way we approach rest and provision and protection and all these kinds of things that come with this. God at the center of our lives. God at the center of the where are we going and the how should we get there questions of life. And it gives us a new understanding of work and rest. Actually resolves for us as if we're followers of Jesus, we have to wrestle with this all the time. How much of it is us working? Or how much of it is us just resting in what has been done? How much of it is us accomplishing? And how much work should we be doing versus how much should we rest? And the church over like centuries upon centuries from the very beginning has wrestled with the question of work and rest. Should we work? Or is what has been done for us is the goal rest. The thing is, if we pick one, we're guaranteed to get the wrong answer. Because either one of them on their own is the wrong answer. It's when the two work together. When we work and when we rest, and all that we do is with God at the center. So when we rest, we say, God, I trust you with the work that I'm not doing right now. And when we work, we say, God, I'm working because I'm doing what you've asked me to do, and the work that I'm doing is done with you at the center. So like at the center isn't our effort. At the center isn't the results that we accomplish. It's God, and our work and our rest is centered on him. There is no substitute for God's protection and provision in our lives. So as we close, 3 ways we can put this into practice, like right now, this week, as we apply these 2 Psalms to our lives. The first is this, is to give to God the thing that you're giving your life to. Give to God the thing that you're giving your life to. To apply these great truths about what God is doing and how God is involved in our lives and how God protects and preserves and provides for us. To apply these songs to the great work of our lives. So instead of working our fingers to the bone, we might still work our fingers to the bone, but we work with God at the center in response to and in gratitude to God as he works through us and provides for us. God at the center of the great work of our lives. Give to God the thing that you're giving your life to. Think about it this way. Think about the primary pursuit, the big pursuit of your life, the thing that you're giving your life to. What would it look like? What would it look like if you placed God at the center of it? Some of you have already done this, and so you know what this looks like because you're living in it right now. But if you took the primary pursuit of your life and say, with God at the center, obedient to God step by step in this pursuit, what would it look like? Would it change my approach? How would my approach look different with God at the center of it? And then work. Do the work, put in the energy, put in the effort, but with God at the center of the primary pursuit of your life. Letting God then do what he's promised to do, giving you the life he created you for, which is not just endless and fruitless labor. It's a blessing that endures for generations. Practice 2. Choose obedience over chasing blessing. Choose obedience over chasing blessing. Simply put, there is no path to a blessed life outside of obedience. The part of the point of these 2 Psalms is no matter how hard you work, no matter how well you protect, no matter how hard you try to build and what is it you do, without God at work, it's in vain. There is no path to a blessed life outside of obedience. And obedience is the path to blessing. So when we've given to God the thing that we're giving our lives to, we say, so God, how would you like me to approach this? God, would you give me wisdom as I'm making the decisions related to this thing that you're at the center of anyways, that you're driving, that you're in charge of. I'm just with you, God, in this primary pursuit. It might matter a whole lot to me, but God, but it's yours. And then we seek God's wisdom, and we live in obedience to him, and let him give us guidance as we make the decisions along the way. And practice 3. Start with rest. Start with rest. So like even the work that we do is from rest, not toward rest, right? But start with rest. That we all, every day, have an opportunity to take a step towards putting all of these principles into practice in our lives. All of us at some point today will lay down to fall asleep. And what if as we laid down to rest, if we made that a spiritual act? We say, God, I trust you. God, I'm about to rest. And God, it's not just rest because I'm tired, but it's rest because I trust you. That God, there's a whole lot of things that are happening in the world around me as I'm closing my eyes to fall asleep. God, I trust you to handle every single thing. God, I trust you to sustain my life. And to make falling asleep a spiritual act. To trust God with the things that we cannot control. To trust God with the things that we are giving our lives to. God at the center, starting with rest.